Jeff. Jeff. J-E-F-F, Jeff. J-E-F-F, Jeff. J-E-F-F, Jeff.
Jeff Stein's our national and presidential expert, noted author. Find his books where you find books. You can find the Iowa Business Report, the Iowa Politics Report, coming to us from his flagship station, KXEL, Cedar Falls, Waterloo, where he kind enough to join us today. Hi, Jeff.
Libraries, coffee shops, wherever you find books.
Random alleys. There. Look, it's a Jeff Stein book.
Thrift shops. Start in the bin in the back where the rejected donations go, and you'll probably find it.
A mobster's doctor's waiting room. There they are, waiting for you to peruse. All right, so
where they've hollowed out the center of the book, and so you can hide something in there. Sure, why not?
Let's start with something wonkish. This is you and I have talked about, but it's kind of diving deep in the numbers because I saw Patty Vasquez out of Chicago made the point about Pennsylvania. Yesterday, Pennsylvania had their primaries, both the Democrat and the Republican. And once again, I'm going to be the first to admit, these primaries, caucuses, each individual state party has some quirks to them. So that it's kind of hard to, you can't really equate them across the board. But at the same time, it is a good temperature gauge. And once again, Donald Trump lost, I think, 16% of the Republican vote in Pennsylvania to Nikki Haley. How long ago was Nikki Haley out? Was it 2 months ago?
Well, she got out right after Super Tuesday, didn't she?
So it was early
6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yeah. So she's been gone, and he still cannot seal the deal. Now, on one side of it, I mean, Biden did better. I mean, he didn't. There was some votes for Dean Phillips, and then there was uncommitted, but it still was, I think, at most, 10% against him versus 16%, and ended up being 17. So I'm guessing some, no-name candidates got a few votes as well. But it at the same time, there is this kind of coordinated event. They're trying to take away votes from Biden in certain states. So there is some of that. To my knowledge, is there anything like that? Is there an undercurrent I have not heard about of Republican voters to make the argument that they're saying, try to send a message to Trump to vote for Haley?
Well, first, with regard to what you mentioned there near the end, there was a concentrated effort. Vote uncommitted, vote against Biden, send a message about Gaza, etc. Mm-hmm. And it failed colossally.
In Pennsylvania,
yeah. Look, anybody can run. The most popular candidate is lucky to get 90% because you've always got some people who are going to vote against. So, there was no issue on the Biden vote. The Trump vote is interesting because there's nothing at stake here.
Yes.
Yet those individuals made a point to say no to Trump in the primary. Now, are they going to come home in November? Well, let's just say if you stray in April, you might want to write this down because this is going to be
okay.
Good.
All right. 1 second here.
Straying in April, you may not come home in November.
Oh, man.
There you go. Work on that.
You said stray, not spay, right? Okay.
No, Mr. Barker, that's a whole different sort of thing.
I definitely wouldn't be coming back after that. No.
Especially as he was concerned. But, it's a throwaway because it's meaningless, right?
Yeah.
But it means that there's at least that many people who are not on the Trump train. And that's interesting because, all right, let's just say they wanted to get it out of their system.
Yes.
Fine. Let's say they'll vote for him in November, hold their nose, and vote for him. The trick is in between, Matt. How much money are they going to give? How much door knocking are they going to do? How much volunteer will they do? And that translates to down ticket support as well. Mm-hmm. And so if you've got erosion at the top, that could spell problems down ticket.
And here's where it gets even more dangerous for the Republicans. Well, two things. One, you're looking at a situation where you're right, because of where we're at, this is already decided. The only people who are showing up are exactly what you're saying. These are the diehards. These are the door knockers. These are the people that are doing campaigns. And so if 15% of them are not there, that's trouble. Here's the other thing. Total votes for Biden in Pennsylvania, 921,000. Total votes for Trump in Pennsylvania, 788,000. Now, we hear this whole thing about, oh, Biden, the Democrats are chaos, chasms, different things, all this stuff going. And we also hear this narrative as Trump's sewing it up, Trump's united the Republican Party. If I'm a Republican, I'm looking at Pennsylvania, a state he has to have. I am seeing, 17% of the party or 16% of the party not voting for him, for voting for Nikki Haley. If that only 5%, even as you said, if 10% comes back but 5% stays out there and does not vote for Trump, he's going to get destroyed in Pennsylvania. And then on top of it, there's clearly an enthusiasm, a little bit. I mean, it's not great. As large as very expansive, but there still seems to be an enthusiasm problem for the Republicans in regards to Trump, and that is played out by the people that showed up.
I don't know because I did not study it.
Yeah,
I don't know how many other contested races there were in the state. Did they have, for example, was there hot action on the Democrat side for a state office? I don't know. Okay. But just on the face of it, I go back to the same thing that I've said, I don't know how many times. I am struck by the number of people who cannot conceive of an outcome other than the one they want in November. And that's, to your point, you're hearing all of these folks on the right saying, how could anybody vote for a dementia patient like that? How could anybody this? And they presume that Trump is just going to steamroll. The math does not support that. And the quicker people figure it out, and again, I go back to people, I talk to a lot of people who scream about election integrity, and I say, okay, let's play with your premise that we have an issue. What has happened to change anything? Well, not really. Okay. So what leads to this sense of optimism? If you say, okay, let's say you're walking out of the studio and you get robbed. Somebody comes up and they shake you and, 3/4 fall out of your pocket because you work in radio and that's as good as it's going to get.
3?
Okay. Well, you're in Minneapolis and Chicago now. So, it's rolling in. All right. So what are you going to do to make sure you don't lose your lunch money next time? Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll put it in a pocket with a button. I know I'll do something, right? So if you thought you were robbed, you take action so you're not robbed again. All these people who said we was robbed, what has happened to change the situation? Answer, nothing. So what's going to change the outcome? I mean, there's nothing there to suggest a different outcome other than the fact that population changes mean if Trump had the same states he had in 2020, in 2024, he'll actually have more electoral votes, but not enough to change the outcome.
Here's where we started getting into the interesting math problem. Because, once again, you and I have talked over and over again about the money issue. The fact that Trump is basically sucking every dollar out of the Republican Party, and now he wants a tribute, basically. The Arizona is not going to be an easy pickup for the Republicans. I mean, as a matter of fact, especially with the 1864 territorial law they just put into effect.
Well, but look what happened. They rescinded that today.
Did they do that? I didn't know if they're trying desperately to get back away from that.
That's the point. We've talked about this for a few weeks, and well, we can't rescind it. We don't have a replacement. And then the whatever hit the fan, and I thought I saw in Politico that they rescinded. Well, that's because of the phone calls, right?
Kerry Lake, what was the one poll I saw? Kerry Lake went from being up by 2 points to being down by 8. And so it was pretty quick.
I saw it closer, but the same result. She was ahead, then she was behind, and that was after flipping. Yeah. After flipping from her past positions.
Florida is now got an abortion, is going to have an abortion constitutional amendment on that ballot. Now, granted, it's probably not going to pass. It needs 60%. But in a state where Rick Scott only won by 1 point, 1 percentage point, and then you have, I think it's been 3 or 4 percentage points. Florida is very much in play. If Pennsylvania is gone, I mean, you tell me where this math is going. Minnesota is not going to flip. Illinois is not going to flip. He has to. We can start doing math now. And granted, it's a long way away. There's a lot of things out there. But as you said, it's like this is basically a math problem. And it's not you can leave personal feelings out of it. I can look at numbers in Pennsylvania and say, this is not going well for him. How are you going to turn this around? And I don't see how they do it without the money which they need, which is being siphoned off. You also have a problem in Arizona. You also are going to have a problem in Florida. And Florida goes, there is no math you got. I mean, I don't care. There's nowhere else you're going to pick up. You're not picking up Oregon. You're not going to pick up Washington. I just don't know where in the world. Colorado's not going to go Republican. So even
if they did, you have to have all of them to answer one state of Florida.
Exactly.
Because of the number of electoral votes. Now, this is the thing. We talked in February, whatever. Yeah. I'm old. I don't remember. Sometime in February.
Mom?
We were talking. I think it was this year. So as we were talking about Dewey and Truman, we, CNN had John King at the big board one night, and I thought Jake Tapper was going to break into tears because King was saying, look at the map. All Trump has to do is flip this, this, and this, 3 little small states, and it's a wildly different outcome. He was right. But this is the difference. They were looking at it as, what states does Trump flip from blue to red? There's his path. They did not take into account the concurrent possibility of red states flipping blue. And that's what you're talking about. So it's not just a matter of flipping blue to red. You have to hold, right? Let's look at Florida for a moment. Do you think Ron DeSantis is going to help Donald Trump in Florida?
God, okay, so the question...
It's easy. It's easy. The answer is no.
No.
Followed by hell no.
Well, because he wants 2028.
Exactly. Now, he could go about it a different way. He could say, I've got to deliver my state for Trump because my reputation is on the line. But if Trump wins and Tim Scott or Kristi Noem, whomever is the vice presidential choice, they're the heir apparent. They're the leading candidate for 2028. It can't be DeSantis unless Trump or DeSantis moves. Now, this is where you say, well, it won't be a problem because it depends on where the Bureau of Prisons places Trump at the time of but I don't think you should say that. Look at this. I'm handling both ends of the show. This is great. But you're not going to put DeSantis on the ticket. So I could sure see a situation where DeSantis says, it's not my fight, not my race. I'm not going to burn good capital after bad.
Yeah.
And, now if he does help, well, that's great. But then he's hurt himself potentially for 2028. You liked the Bureau of Prisons comment, didn't you?
Jailer. Hello, Warden. It's me, the greatest prisoner of all time.
Well, you have to shoot. By the way, that's pretty gutsy from a guy wearing an orange T-shirt today.
There you go.
It looks like it says Hennepin County on the back.
Oh, it does. I swear to gosh. I mean, that trash pickup on the weekend is delightful. So by the way, you bring up another problem that he's got.
Yeah.
Vance is about the only person's name I keep hearing for vice president that makes any damn sense because that's Ohio, and Ohio is going to be closer this time as well. Noam's not going to help you. Tim Scott's not going to help you. I mean, South Carolina is a nice little pickup, but it's not a big electoral college. It's not going to, it's not, I swear, I mean, he needs to have if he could, if he'd be smart to basically either get Tim Scott or Rubio or DeSantis as the VP. But He just doesn't seem to be smart enough to figure out, I need to get Kerry Lake, get somebody that can help deliver a state.
The concept these days of a vice presidential choice helping you is pretty limited. There's not much evidence. And when you see that it's Trump or Biden, You can't tell me that the vice president's going to carry that person across the line.
Well, we'll talk more about this when we come back. Jeff Stein on a Wednesday. We take a break. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show on your Wednesday. Jeff Stein joining us right now. Jeff, let's just really quick get into the trial issue here, because you are a lawyer. There have been some people who have stood up and said, might be time for him to grab a plea deal before this goes and gets any worse. First of all, your thoughts on the hush money trial, and as a lawyer, would you kind of look and say, you know what, maybe the best thing here is you do take a plea deal at this point?
No, because first of all, your client would fire you immediately because he's not taking a deal.
No,
right?
He's going to lose, but he's going to lose.
Okay, first of all, it's not a hush money trial. Hush money is not illegal. It is a false documents trial.
It's a bookkeeping trial, yeah.
Here's why that's important. You call it a hush money trial. People call it a hush money trial because that was the subject of the conversation and payments, etc. Nobody cares because that's legal. But falsifying documents about payment, that's a whole different story. And that's what he's been charged with. Falsifying documents, claiming something was a legal expense when it isn't a legal expense, and doing it in furtherance of election fraud. So it's a nuanced sort of case, but everybody calls it the hush money trial, and that's not to his benefit. The reason he won't take any plea deal, period, is because from an electoral standpoint, the more things they file against him, the easier it is for him to say, it's all a fake, it's all engineered by Crooked Joe, it's all election interference, because you can lump that all together like that. And that's the word from a global political strategist who said, it's much easier to make the sale to the public by saying they're all ganging up on me. Mm-hmm. But what's going to happen when a judge finally has enough and wants to put him in a cell? What happens when there's an actual felony conviction? I don't care how many people say, well, it'll be overturned on appeal. I happen to agree. I think it probably would. However, it's still there during the election. And convicted felons in most states cannot vote. So he could be elected president, not being able to vote for himself, and literally could be prisoner number 045047.
The problem here is this, as far as overturning this, if he is found guilty, is that you need to find a problem with the process. And the instructions were false. The application of the law was misguided. They kind of, the prosecutor's office kind of let know their hand when they talked about, they implied that the conspiracy here was to win the presidency. And this was in conjunction with the Access Hollywood tape that had just come on out. That was why they were buying this person off. Going back to the question, we got sidetracked a little bit, but how do you feel this trial is going for him? Because I think the David Pecker stuff from yesterday at the National Enquirer, it did not make him look, this looked pretty ugly. I mean, and understand, that might, just because it looks ugly doesn't mean it's not illegal, but it's, once again, it's just chipping away. And I go back to Pennsylvania, I'm wondering how much, this deterioration is because of what is playing out in New York right now.
And it's very possible. If you're keeping it within the four corners of the courtroom, the jury knows who he is.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they don't have any doubt that he agreed to pay a large sum of money to keep someone quiet, potentially on multiple occasions. The question is the behavior, does that constitute a narrow legal argument of falsification of a document? Look, as a lawyer, if you were involved in some sort of an issue and we negotiated a settlement, you're not writing a check to the aggrieved party directly. You write it to your lawyer, and then I write a check out of my monitored trust account so that the receiving party knows that it's a valid check. So, in a very broad sense, saying it's a legal expense because I paid money to a lawyer, that's got some teeth to it. The other thing for the appeal issue is, could Bragg legally turn it into a felony when he was time barred by the misdemeanor? And that's where the nuances come in. But to your broad point, you get all this testimony with a squishy voter base, and if he selects J.D. Vance, he might as well just hang it up. I mean, I just don't think that. Fine, you want to win Ohio, great, but you're going to lose how many other states in the process?
Exactly, but at the same time, that makes more sense than Kristi Noem, really, if you want to know the truth. And
well, no, it doesn't, because female. That's not a bad thing for a voting public with a presidential candidate who has a problem with suburban females.
Sarah Palin. You know, it's the same thing. I mean, that's the concept.
They are not the same. They are not the same thing.
But it's the same. It's the same concept. It's like, oh, we'll just put a woman on the ticket, and then all the women will come to our side. I don't. The only thing that's kept Kristi Noem from being more well known is the fact that she's in South Dakota, and the fact that when that comes to light, and the same thing as Wasilla, Alaska. The second all of a sudden it's out there, it becomes a much bigger deal.
There is a difference. She was a member of Congress. She then went home, ran for governor, and has had a track record. With all due respect to Governor Palin, she was in 2 years, made a good speech, and then quit before the end of her first term and hasn't won an election since. So, but the broad point of why would you put somebody on a ticket, I just don't think it's electoral anymore. In terms of, well, that'll bring me the state, because otherwise put Ted Cruz on and win Texas. It's not going to happen.
The problem for Trump in this trial is that what's happened has happened. And once again, this is just basically numbers. If you go back and say, well, here is this payment from this file, and it was not supposed to come from that file or that pile of cash, it was supposed to come from this pile of cash, but because you wanted to keep it off the books and you wanted to try to make this a political expense, you put it from this one. You're right. There's a lot of gravy that's going on right now with this as far as the salacious nature of it. But the reality is that when it comes down to it, they're setting up this and then they're saying, well, here's all the payments and this is undeniable. And that's the problem.
The payments are fine. The payments are fine.
But I mean, the bookkeeping is the problem, and that's all on paper right now.
Right. But again, if you quantified it as a legal expense, because you paid it to your lawyer,
but he didn't. He labeled it as a political expense. And that's part of the problem that he has is he labeled this as a political expense.
It can't be a political expense, but I thought it was because he had been given the guidance that it's a legal expense and you pay it that way. If that's the case, sure.
Jeff, thank you very much. We'll have to talk to you next week. Chicago, thank you very much. Minneapolis, St. Paul, hour 2 up next.